The Roman frontier had cracked. Now it began to bleed. For centuries, Rome had believed the barbarian world beyond its borders was chaotic, divided, and weak. Tribes fighting tribes, kings rising and falling like the winter tide, an untamed wilderness to be held at bay. But the world beyond the rivers was changing. The old order, held in place by Roman steel and gold for generations, was starting the fray. The empire, consumed by its own internal fires, had turned its gaze inward. Decades of civil war, plague, and economic decay had thinned the legions and emptied the treasuries. The long celebrated peace that Pax Romana was now but a distant, fading memory. On the far-flung ramparts of the Rhine and the Danube, the sentinels watched the forests with a new, gnawing anxiety. The shadows were growing longer, the silence heavier. For the men guarding the edge of the world, the question was no longer asterisk if asterisk the tide would turn, but asterisk when asterisk. The heart of the empire was sick, and the frontiers, its very skin, were growing thin and fragile. Each season, the border felt less like a shield and more like a scar. Beyond the watchtowers, in the dark heart of Germania, a different kind of pressure was building. The ancient forests, once bountiful, were becoming a prison. A colder, wetter climate had begun to creep across the northern world, shortening the growing seasons and turning fertile lands into marsh and bog. Harvests failed. Famine, a specter rarely seen, now haunted the villages of the Alemanni, the Franks, and the Goths. With hunger came desperation. The old lands could no longer support the growing numbers of the tribes. Population pressures, once a source of strength, now became a catalyst for conflict and movement. Chieftains and kings looked south, toward the warmth and riches of the Roman world, not merely with envy, but with the grim necessity of survival. The earth itself was pushing them forward. It was a force as inexorable as a glacier, a slow, grinding migration born of cold and hunger. Rome's weakness was an opportunity, but the changing world behind them was a command. They had to move, or they would perish. The first crossings were not a deluge, but a trickle, a scattered warband raiding across a frozen river under the cloak of a winter night. A clan of desperate farmers seeking new lands, testing the resolve of a thinly manned Roman fort. Along the vast, porous frontier of the Rhine and Danube, the incursions became more frequent, more brazen. At first, they were dismissed in Rome as minor irritations, the usual frontier troubles. A legion would be dispatched, the intruders punished, and the border restored. But the trickles did not stop. They multiplied. What were once isolated raids began to coalesce into coordinated movements, entire peoples on the march. The rivers, those mighty symbols of Roman power and separation, were proving to be mere lines on a map, easily erased by a harsh winter or a moment of distraction. The border, once a clear and defiant demarcation between civilization and the wild, was becoming a blurred, contested space. Every mist-shrouded dawn brought the possibility of a new breach, a new alarm sounding from a distant fort. A dangerous assumption had taken root in the Roman mind, that the barbarian was an eternal savage, incapable of change, a primitive warrior who fought with brute force but no discipline. This was a fatal miscalculation. For generations, the tribes had observed Rome. They had fought against her legions, but they had also fought asterisk for asterisk them. Thousands of Germanic warriors had served as auxiliaries in the Roman army, learning its tactics, its organization, and its discipline. They had seen how a cohort maneuvered, how a legion built its fortified camps, how Roman iron was forged into superior blades. They had learned the value of logistics, of supply lines, and of a unified command. When these veterans returned to their homelands, they brought back more than just Roman coin. They brought back Roman military knowledge. The lessons learned in the service of the eagle were now being turned against it. The wild charge was being replaced by the shield wall. The disorganized raid was giving way to the planned campaign. Rome had, for centuries, hired the wolf to guard the sheep. Now, the wolf was teaching its own pack how to hunt. The result was a profound and deadly transformation. The warrior who now stood across the river was not the same foe their grandfathers had faced. He might wear the furs of his ancestors, but he might also carry a sword of Roman steel, perhaps even wear a helmet taken from a fallen legionary. The chieftains who led these new armies were no longer just charismatic brawlers. Some were shrewd tacticians who understood the weaknesses in Roman frontier strategy. They knew which forts were undermanned, which river crossings were poorly guarded. They had learned from Rome's own playbook, adapting its methods to their own style of warfare. The borderlands, once a zone of Roman dominance, evolved into a landscape of constant, simmering conflict. It was a place of ambush and reprisal, of burning villas and slaughtered patrols. Forts that had stood for a century were now isolated islands in a hostile sea. The frontier was no longer holding the line. It was a grinder, consuming men and resources at an ever-increasing rate, leading the weakened empire one cohort at a time. With each successful raid, with each Roman standard captured, a new spirit grew among the tribes. The old fear of Roman invincibility began to wither, replaced by a bold and rising confidence. They had met the legionary in battle and seen that he could bleed, that he could break. They saw the great empire, once a monolithic giant, now struggling to secure its own provinces, distracted by usurpers and internal strife. This was not the Rome of Trajan or Marcus Aurelius. This was an empire in its twilight, a wounded beast whose roar was becoming weaker. Resistance became rebellion. The desire for plunder evolved into a demand for land, for a permanent place within the empire's bounds. Alliances, once fleeting, now solidified. Federations of tribes, like the Alemanni and the Franks, united by a common purpose and a shared contempt for a weakened Rome, began to act in concert, launching massive invasions that strained the frontier defenses to their breaking point. A psychological shift had occurred. The barbarians no longer saw themselves as merely raiding the fringes of civilization. They saw themselves as its inheritors. But even as these storms gathered along the Rhine and Danube, a new wind was beginning to blow from the far, unknown east. On the vast, grassy steppes beyond the horizon, a different kind of horseman was on the move. They were a people spoken of only in whispers, a name that carried a primal terror, the Huns. They were a force of nature, A human hurricane sweeping westward, displacing all in their path. The shockwave of their arrival was already being felt, pushing tribes like the Goths and the Vandals against the Roman frontier with even greater desperation. The conflicts that Rome now faced were but the first tremors. The true earthquake was yet to come. The old world stood on a precipice, unaware that the ground beneath its feet was about to be torn apart. The bleeding frontier was just the beginning. The age of invasions was at hand.